on the 27th of September 2021, that's last year, at the annual memorial ceremony of the first Ugandan Chief Justice, Benedicto Kiwanuka. On my way to the function, I was struck by a sudden illness, and I drove to the hospital instead. It was not possible to arrange for an alternative way of delivering that speech. I request that you viewers and listeners will lend me your ears. Your Excellency, the President, the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, my Lord the Chief Justice, my Lord the Deputy Chief Justice, my Lords the Chief Justice Emeritus, my Lords the Justices of the Courts of Judicature, your worships, ladies and gentlemen, I thank Chief Justice Alphonse Chigamuni Winedolo for giving me this opportunity, not only to witness the launch of my second book, The Administration and Delivery of Justice in Uganda through the years, as an official activity of the judiciary on this most auspicious of days in the calendar of the judiciary, the memorial of my predecessor, Chief Justice Benedicto Kiwanuka, but also to allow me to make some remarks. Originally, I had intended to have the book launched at a celebration of my 90th birthday, but this was not to be due to the lockdowns following the COVID-19 pandemic. Uganda is known as a home of Christian matters. On this day, we celebrate the life of a judicial matter, a matter for justice, who paid the ultimate price for an independent judiciary in an independent Uganda that was in the clutches of a military dictator. On a day I cannot remember, it was just over 8 decades ago. I could have been 10 years or so old. I was at home on vacation from Kaliro Primary School. I saw a small book on a table in the sitting room. Curious to find out what it was, I flipped through the pages. There were writings in tabular form. At one page, I read out in Luganda, abiri musatu emu lukumi mu lwenda asatu mu emu. Wambuzi yazalibwa. In the evening, my father returned from work, and without any preliminaries, I asked him which Wambuzi was born on the 23rd of January 1931. "Where did you get that information from?" he asked. "We're in the sitting room," and I said, pointing, "That book." He looked at the book, and after a while he gave me a sweet smile and said, "It is you." I paid him back a broad grin. On 23rd January 2021, when I clocked 90, I intended to celebrate the day with as many relatives, friends, and colleagues as possible. But this could not be done because of the prevailing circumstances. I would like to express my apologies to all our relatives, friends, and colleagues who would have loved to join us but could not. Turning to the challenges of the administration of justice in Uganda, it would be valid to ask the question, why did you go ahead to publish this collection of speeches from 1974 to 2019, when I have been in retirement for the last 20 years or so? Members of the legal profession will know that quite often a judge or advocate will ask, in relation to some proposition in law, what is your authority for that proposition? I'll begin with the authority by borrowing the words of St. Peter in Peter chapter 2, verses 12 to 15. So I will always remind you of these things, even though you know them and are firmly established in the truth you now know, you now have. I think it is right to refresh your memory as long as I live in the tent of this body, because I know I will soon put it aside, as our Lord Jesus Christ has made clear to me. And I will make every effort to see that after my departure, you will always be able to remember these things. Oftentimes, when office holders retire or move on some institutional establishment, memory is lost. And those who follow in their footsteps often imagine that they have to reinvent the wheel in some instances. Some of the challenges that face the judiciary of this country today have been with us for a long time. The need to remind you of these challenges, their genesis, and the urgent need to remedy them is one of the reasons for publication of this book. Just as I was able to learn the date of my birth from a written record, I am hopeful that this book will remind you and others that will follow in your footsteps of the continuing challenges to the administration of justice in our country and possible solutions. In my book, The Odyssey of a Judicial Career in Precarious Times, My Trials and Triumphs as a three-time Chief Justice of Uganda, I told my story. The title is a story in itself. For 40 years of my working life, I was in the legal system of the country. 30 years of that period in the judiciary. On that celebrated day, then Crown Counsel in the Ministry of Justice, and from that day I continued my service as a state attorney and ultimately joined the judiciary, the third arm of the government. The other two, of course, being the executive and the legislature, or if you prefer, the presidency and parliament. The Constitution, the basic law from which all other laws radiate, provides for separation of powers between the three arms, intended to provide checks and balances between one another through functions clearly laid out for each arm. The main function of the judiciary is to solve disputes involving individual persons, legal persons like corporations, and the executive. Every judicial officer, before assumption of office, takes the judicial oath to do justice at all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. This is no mean responsibility. It follows that the judiciary must be manned by people of the highest caliber in legal qualifications, knowledge of the law, experience, integrity, and commitment. The martyrdom of Chief Justice Benedicto Kiwanuka illustrates this standard. In my Odyssey, I commented on the importance of the constitution or membership of the Judicial Service Commission, which is the body entrusted with recommending for appointment and enforcing discipline of judicial officers. I also commented on the operation of that body, particularly its independence, which must always be maintained, and that it should minimize or preferably curtail interactions with the executive over appointments, and also refrain from ceding its powers or part of it to the executive. At the launch of the Odyssey, I commented on the role of Parliament, which has to approve certain judicial appointments. It must ascertain the legality, propriety, in all respects of the appointment before approval, and should not be a mere rubber stamp on executive appointments. On 29th December 2018, I held a Thanksgiving ceremony to thank the Almighty for what He enabled me to do in my life. On that occasion, I painted a picture of the Uganda I'd like to see after spending all my working life trying to shape, in particular, the third arm of the government. This was a democratic, peaceful, a prosperous Uganda. There were some suggestions made to correct imbalance between the trio, where the judiciary was being treated as a junior member. In the assignment given to me by my brother Bart Katurebe, the Chief Justice at the time, to deliver the inaugural lecture in the memory of my predecessor, Benedict Kiwanuka, the first Ugandan Chief Justice, I could not help referring to the imbalance in the three arms of the government: impunity of the executive, demeaning of the judiciary, and perpetual financial and manpower starvation of the judiciary. I made a few suggestions for improvement of the effectiveness of the Judicial Service Commission, including the involvement in the operation the top judicial officer, the Chief Justice. Approximately 30 or so years ago, the lowest courts in the country remained unfunctional for some time because there was no money to pay not salaries but allowances to the assessors who were required to sit with them. At about the same time, a number of criminal sessions of the High Court were cancelled because there were no funds to operate them. On that occasion, I spoke to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General, who was Honorable Mulenga LIP, and threatened to close the criminal division of the High Court. The minister said I could not do such a thing. My answer was simple: watch me, Honorable Minister. Soon after that exchange, we were able to mount some criminal sessions of the High Court, and I did not know where the funds came from. Not long ago, I learned that my Lord the Chief Justice was in some kind of interaction with the Minister of Finance over lack of funds to operate some courts. The question I ask is, what can the judiciary do to tell the executive that delays in litigation attributed to the judiciary are in fact caused by the executive? Yes, some steps have been taken to improve administration of justice. The latest being the passing into law of what I think must be the oldest bill in our history, the Administration of the Judiciary Bill. It took some 20 or so years to mature. In my view, this law opens wide the gates for attracting, identifying, and preserving legal talent in the judiciary. These people, assured of their future, will serve with dedication, commitment, and moonlighting will cease to be an attraction.
No, yeah, free.